The agenda is set. Hello, everyone. I'm Brent Goff in Berlin. It's a boy. Kate and William are proud parents of a son and a possible future king of Britain. A new bud on the Windsor family tree. That and more today. It's time to talk. In Britain, in the Commonwealth, and around the world, they are celebrating the birth of Kate and William's first son. Just imagine, he could be the first royal alive today to become a 22nd century monarch. Today, we'll ponder what regal road is before him. Nazi war criminals. Some are alive today, living in freedom, but there is a wanted list and a renewed effort here in Germany to hunt them down before it's too late. The Nuremberg trials after World War II, the most infamous Nazi criminals were convicted there, but some who aided in the atrocities have hidden in normalcy for 70 years. That may be about to change. And the Pope is on his first international trip, and some say he's going back to his roots. Pope Francis, the first South American to head the Catholic Church, departed Rome earlier this week for Brazil. He hopes to connect with young people, but protests and demands for reform may well exceed the power of this pontiff. Well, I've invited three people today to talk, argue, and pry apart these headlines. My first guest is Claudia Hüfisch. She is a theologian with the Archdiocese here in Berlin. She's been on the show before to talk religious matters. You spent the last 6 years in Brazil, Claudia, and you're going to talk us through the Pope's Brazil visit today. I'm glad you're on the show. My second guest is known around the world as the last Nazi hunter. I'm happy to welcome to the show Dr. Efrem Zuroff. He is director of the Wiesenthal Center's Jerusalem office, and he is its chief Nazi hunter. You're also the author of the book Operation Last Chance, One Man's Quest to Bring Nazi Criminals to Justice. You're here today to talk about the new campaign here in Germany to find Nazi criminals. Dr. Zuroff, we're glad you're on the show today.
Thank you.
And my next guest gets, I guess you could say, the easy job, the baby job. He's our British royal watcher. Everyone's laughing in the studio. Now I'm happy to welcome to the show Tom Levine. He is a royal watcher. He's author of the book The Windsor's Glamour and Tragedy of an Almost Normal Family. Yes, almost normal. That's a good way to describe them. You know, this is an important week for the Windsors. The whole world is basically flipping out about this. And I have to ask all of you, are we going overboard about this baby, Tom?
Well, yeah, a bit. But I mean, you know, that's life in the 21st century. We have these media frenzies all the time, and this time it's about the baby, which is an essential part of what monarchy is about, is being a family, having children, marrying. 2 years ago we had the big wedding. Last year we had the jubilee. So now it's the baby. That's what monarchy is about, and we all.
It's not a board. Dr. Zuroff, what do you say about that? I mean, it's.
To the uninvolved outsider, this seems absolutely ridiculous. And we're sitting there in Israel and in many places all over the world wondering what's motivating this obsession with the monarchy. It's like a throwback to old times.
Like someone turned the clock back. Claudia, what do you say about this?
I was actually thinking of, if I have 2 children by myself, and how it is if you're pregnant, you're waiting for the baby. And I was, with my first baby, you are so nervous, everything is new. And I was really trying to, think of her. Yes.
What Kate would be going
yes.
through. But yeah, I mean, and that's normal.
Yes.
I mean, that is normal. You know, I have to say, you know, Dr. Zuroff was talking about, you know, coming in from Tel Aviv today, coming into this baby storm. I mean, in Germany, it's that way too. I mean, this is the cover of, you know, the most widely read newspaper in Germany, and of course, there's a picture. They don't have a picture of the baby yet, but as soon as there's a picture of the baby, they'll be there.
Worth millions.
It will be worth millions.
Yeah.
But you know, it's the headline here in Germany as it is around the world. We're going to talk about the life of this new baby boy, what's ahead of him in just a moment. But first, we want to take a look at what happened when the world found out that Kate and William are now parents of a baby boy.
The birth of Britain's new prince, a moment to celebrate in the United Kingdom, and even as far away as Japan. Royal baby fever, it seems, is everywhere. The baby's arrival was announced in accordance with tradition in a formal bulletin in front of Buckingham Palace. Thanks to enormous media attention, the birth of the new prince is a topic of conversation around the world, even for people who normally don't follow the British royal family. It's been a field day for the press. In Britain, the tabloid newspaper The Sun even changed its name to mark the occasion. The birth of a royal is a significant moment for Britain. But why are people outside the country taking an interest too? Is it all just media hype?
Okay, Tom, I wanted just to add to about how crazy it seems people have been about this baby. Yesterday, I was teasing on Twitter and Facebook our show today, and I said, you know, we're going to talk about the baby, and I asked people what they thought the baby, the little boy's name should be. I mean, I got tons of messages on that. You almost get the feeling that people feel like they are a member of the royal family. I mean, you're a royal watcher. I mean, is Queen Elizabeth the type of person that you want to sit down and have a cup of tea with?
It would be very, very amusing, probably, to have tea with Her Majesty. But I think that's not the point. The very core of monarchy is exactly that, what you described. I mean, 150 years ago, William Bagehot, who was then the editor of The Economist, wrote the English Constitution, which is sort of the main piece of literature about how the British state works. And a lot of that is sort of past and gone, but the core is still how monarchy works and how we live it. And the thing is that, or his argument is that life is complicated, the world is complicated, and therefore people look for easy things. And something that is really easy to understand is family. And therefore what my colleague here said is if you had a baby, if you went through the same thing, you remember that. And
it's something people can relate to. I know that Prince William and Kate, they seem to be much more popular than the previous generations, and a lot of people say that they're more popular because they're trying to appear to be more normal, like you or I or anyone else would be, but they're not normal people.
They're absolutely not normal people. No, I mean they're not normal people as, say, the children of David Beckham and Victoria Beckham are. They are very rich, they're very apart, and they are people that will always be monarchs.
Yeah, but I'm going to have to, pick a bone there with you, Tom. I mean, David Beckham, he's a star, he became a star. This boy who was born this week, he has been born into this family. He will never know anything different. So isn't it...
Unless the monarchy is canceled.
Unless the monarchy is canceled. I mean, I was going to get to that. I mean, jump ahead, but
let's look at the children of David Beckham. Yeah, they are born to somebody who did something brilliant, but they themselves have done nothing at all, and they are celebrities in their own kind. Maybe not everywhere, but there are people getting excited about whatever they're doing. The difference between them and this little boy there is that they have a choice. When they grow up, they might say, I don't want anything of this, and I'm going to drop out of this whole celebrity circus. This boy doesn't have that chance. As long as the monarchy goes on, and even if it's not on anymore, he will still be, oh, he's the man who should have been king.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting, as I was saying at the top of the show, I mean, he's born today in 2013. Yep. He could live to see the 22nd century, so he could be a monarch when we go into the 22nd century. Do you want to venture a guess and look into the future? And will Britain have its monarchy when we go into the 22nd century? Or are we looking at the birth of the last monarch?
If there is a last monarch, I think he's already we already know them quite well. It will probably be William, but it's very.
Why would you say that? You would say William would. Why? Why would you say that?
Yeah, because his father is now sort of in his 60s, so in 20-25 years, William will succeed. So therefore, we are looking at a period that we can imagine how politics and society will change. And it could, yeah, of course, it's well possible that monarchy will change so much that it starts to become dislocated from society. But I would always argue that monarchy has this system, built-in system of succession that almost proves or assures that there is a monarchy going on. Because in the moment that a monarch dies, people think about that person who was probably very popular, or hopefully
it's very fragile, right?
Yeah.
What struck me yesterday, the reporting from London, the British reporters were all talking about Kate Middleton was a very good woman and wife because she had given her husband the first child that she gave birth to, and it was a boy. And, but isn't that amazing? In 2013, you have reporters talking about that she's a great royal wife. I mean, that's what's being...
That's quite horrible, because, I mean, especially as if it had been a girl, for the first time, the rules and laws would have been set up, which was a very complicated process to have her become queen. Right. And that would have been probably even better for the monarchy at the end of...
You know, I was doing some research yesterday about this, and the House of Lords is in the process of changing the 1351 Treason Act. They were going to have to go back to the year 1351 and change the Treason Act because it said that it was treason for someone to kill the eldest son of the king, and they were going to change that to the eldest child of the king. But this is something that was obviously going to go back to the 12th century. So, yeah, enough with history. Let's talk about Princess Diana.
Okay. Good point, yeah.
See, that's something that everyone wakes up when they hear. Do you think Princess Diana would like what's happening now?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. She would have been happy to become a grandmother and to see her son have a family on its own and in a sort of normal setting. Sort of normal, as I said. You know, they're very unnormal, but they try to not go over the top and be completely, you know, like stars. Yeah? But they like to be as normal as possible.
Agreement? Or any opinion? All this silence is amazing. Claudia, what do you say? I mean,
I think it's a big challenge if you are always in the public eye. And I think for royals, this definitely fits the picture, yes? That you do have a certain pressure of how people perceive you from outside. But I think from what I get, and I'm not really following that much, but my impression is that they really try to live under a certain low-key profile as much as this is possible. And I would expect nothing else when we know the name of the boy, that they will try to, for their child, try to find a possible low-key profile that would keep the family atmosphere intact. Yes, so I'm looking forward to see how they manage to do that.
Yeah.
Yes?
I mean, this boy is being born into a media blitz, unlike any other. I mean, I'm sure we all remember 1982 when William was born. The media frenzy then, but it was nothing compared to what we're seeing now.
Yeah, because media is different. Yeah. We have, all this new speed.
And with this new speed and this constant attention, is this new royal, is it going to be possible for him to maintain and hold the family flag and the family honor and still be recognized as something important to the British people? I mean, I'm just trying to find out if that question I asked earlier, are we looking at the birth of the last British royal?
think that it's all very dependent on how media and our use of media is going to go, and how it's going to develop, how we as societies go on with that. A monarchy, a lot in the moment is sort of concentrating on this. Oh, they should be normal. They should go take the tube to their job or go by bike. Of course, on the other side, we really want them to be unnormal and to take horse and carriage if possible. It's both sides. It's like we want them to be special, we want them to be normal, we want them to have be glamorous. We don't, especially in Britain, don't want them to spend money.
When you're taking the tube, right?
It's very, very difficult to be glamorous in taking the tube, exactly. And therefore, I think that if they come up with a system that is, as they do in the moment, is sometimes glamorous and sometimes quite normal, then they will sort of bring monarchy in. Monarchy has always changed. It's very, very different today than, say, in Victorian times, in Edwardian times. So let's see how the palace is going to change. It's a slow thing. You know, it's not every 4 years there's an election. There's every generation there's something going on, like a birth, or a wedding, or a death in the family, and then that's when the crucial points come for monarchs.
Quickly, before we move on, I just wanted to ask about names, because the market right now for betting is unbelievable. People are making lots of money. Some people are going to become very rich betting on the names. What would you venture, a bet on what the name of this new son is going to be?
My money would be if I would bet on Arthur.
On Arthur?
Yep.
King Arthur?
Yep.
Okay, I'll put that down.
So much for low profile.
Yeah. King Arthur, I'll tell you what we got on Facebook and Twitter. Edward and George were the ones that came out on top. But Arthur is also a good one. I think I'd have to go with that. Okay, well, we'll find out probably within the week or so what that name is going to be. So the story will continue. All right, we're going to move on now to something that may seem a little bit more serious, and is certainly much more pertinent to where we are right here, and that is Berlin. It is difficult to live here in Berlin and to not be reminded that this was once the seat of power for the Nazis. Their monuments and memorials tell us to pause and remember the atrocities, many of which had their genesis in this capital more than 70 years ago. Well, there is unfinished business in all of this history. Here in Germany, there are Nazi war criminals, some, of course, very old people, living in freedom. They have never been caught, they've never been brought to justice, but a new campaign is getting underway now to help locate them. Time is running out, but that is not stopping the Nazi hunters.
Immediately after World War II, many of the surviving top Nazis were put on trial by the Allies. 12 were sentenced to death after the Nuremberg trials. Of course, it wasn't just leaders who committed crimes. Interest turned to ordinary people involved in the Holocaust, such as guards in the camps where millions of people were killed. In Germany, a milestone came with the trial of John Demjanjuk. He was found guilty in Germany of working as a guard at a death camp. His conviction marked the first time a person had been found guilty in Germany just by virtue of working at a camp, without there being any evidence of individual crimes. Although those involved are now well over 90 years of age, German investigators are still hoping to try at least 50 more guards who worked in the Nazi camps.
Dr. Zuroff, you are considered the world's last Nazi hunter. We brought you here to Berlin where a campaign is getting underway this week. Tell us a little bit about this campaign.
The campaign is called Operation Last Chance, for obvious reasons, and it's focusing on those who served in the death camps and in the mobile killing units, because in the wake of the Demjanjuk conviction, it's now possible to bring anyone who served in those places or in that capacity to trial. For many years, German prosecutors could not bring a case against a Nazi war criminal unless they could prove that the person had committed a specific crime against a specific person. And to do so in places like Sobibor or Treblinka or Auschwitz or in the Einsatzgruppen, it's very, very difficult. And the practical result was that people who over a prolonged period of time, were involved on a daily basis in mass murder, were basically ignored by the prosecutors. So in the wake of the Demjanjuk conviction, they can now be brought to justice, and the main issue now is to find them.
Why do you think that there has been that change in the German courts and the German legal system that makes it easier to target and convict people for Nazi war crimes?
Change was because the problem is much more manageable now. Had this legal reasoning been applied systematically in the 50s, 60s, 70s, thousands and thousands of people would have been brought to justice who were basically ignored by the German judicial system.
So you're saying it's basically a matter of numbers now?
No question. That's to my mind. And the fact that it's clear that we're running out of time, and a final effort, there's more of an effort being made now than, say, 10 years ago.
So there's something about that, though, that doesn't sit well. A Nazi war criminal who lives to, let's say, be 90 or 95 stands a chance in Germany of being caught and being convicted. But let's say a Nazi war criminal who died at 65, they never had to face any justice.
Okay, that's true, but just because, let's say, if there were a crime committed by a gang, and the leader of the gang was somehow able to escape justice either by leaving the country or dying for some reason, would you ignore the other people who committed the crime just because the head of the gang wasn't brought to justice? Of course not. So here's an opportunity to at least obtain a measure of justice. Because, listen, there's no perfect justice in the world. And there was never any hope of bringing to court all those people who committed the crimes of the Holocaust, because it was simply impossible. So you have to look at the thing completely differently. You have to look and say any such person who is ultimately held accountable is a victory for justice and an important achievement for society.
Do we know how many Nazi war criminals are still alive and free in Germany?
No. No one knows the answer to that question.
And with this campaign, are you relying basically on goodwill from people in Germany if they think they have information to call and let you know?
We're relying on the attraction of a reward, a financial reward. But I have to say, we started this rewards program relatively a long time ago, and some of the best information we received over the years came from people who didn't want the money. On the other hand, if I, for example, were to convene a press conference in Berlin and indicate that I was about to turn to the goodwill and conscience of the German people and say, please help us, give us information, with no reward being offered, no journalist would show up at the press conference. It's the reward that makes the story newsworthy.
It's the money.
And I have to say that there have been instances, and interestingly enough, just last month, a very important Hungarian Nazi war criminal, who was the commander of a ghetto in Košice, which today is Slovakia, and then was under Hungarian rule, who sent over 15,000 Jews to Auschwitz to be murdered, was charged in the wake of information we received because we were offering a prize.
Is it easier to be a Nazi hunter in Germany than Eastern Europe?
In Eastern Europe, it's close to impossible. Because in Eastern Europe, there's absolutely no political will to bring these people to justice. Because many of the people who were actively involved in the murder of Jews and other enemies of the Reich also fought against the Soviets, against the communists. And in these countries, or what we call the new democracies of Eastern Europe, those who fought against communism are considered the heroes. But unfortunately, these heroes, in certain cases, and in certain countries, in many cases, actually were the ones who helped the Nazis murder the Jews in those countries.
So there's still this whole processing of what happened in the past that hasn't taken place in Eastern Europe.
Well, part of the reason is that immediately after World War II, these countries either became part of the Soviet Union or were under communist domination. And the communists did their own manipulation of the events of World War II. And it was only when these countries became democracies, in 1991, when the Soviet Union broke up, that for the first time, these countries had the opportunity to teach the truth, write the truth, tell the truth. But unfortunately, what we're seeing, and especially since these countries were admitted to the EU, and I'm talking primarily about Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Ukraine isn't part of the EU, nor is Belarus, but Croatia was just admitted, for example. These people are telling a distorted version, they're presenting a distorted version of the events, which minimizes the participation of their locals, and is trying to convince the world that communism is just as bad, if not worse, than Nazism. which is simply not true. Now, you know, if a country had a choice of being a country of victims or a country of killers, it's really a no-brainer.
Right.
Okay, so obviously they want to be countries of victims, and in a certain sense they were victimized. They were victimized by the Soviets, but they have to understand that if they want to really create these vibrant liberal democracies that they ostensibly aspire to be, you can't hide mass murder. And what most people don't realize is that the nature of collaboration with the Nazis in Eastern Europe was significantly different than collaboration with the Nazis elsewhere. Everywhere in countries occupied by the Nazis or allied with Nazi Germany, the Nazis succeeded in enlisting local help. But as far as outside of Eastern Europe, that local help ended at the train station. In other words, Jews were defined, Jews were denied opportunity to earn a living, they were discriminated against, they were concentrated in certain places, they were arrested, brought to trains, put on trains to be murdered in the East, in the death camps. The Belgian, French, Dutch police were not integrated into the mechanism of mass murder. So what they did was accessory to murder. They didn't carry out the murders themselves. But in Eastern Europe, the Nazis incorporated the local helpers in countries like Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Ukraine, Belarus, and Croatia, and let them do a lot of the killing. So in their cases, collaboration doesn't only mean arresting Jews, doesn't only mean stealing Jewish property, or defining who is a Jew according to these laws, but it includes mass murder. That's a difficult issue to face.
It is. Dr. Zuroff, you obviously are a man motivated by passion about what you're doing. Is it lonely being the last Nazi hunter? People are always talking about the fact that your time is limited anyway. And there aren't other people out there like you.
There aren't people like me doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, I mean, you're called the last Nazi hunter for a reason.
Right. Listen, this is a very frustrating job, and it has its very lonely moments. But I have to say that one of the great things of doing a job like this is the fantastic people I met along the way who want to help us. People from all different walks of life, people from all different religions.
And who don't necessarily want the money, the reward, right?
Listen, I'll give you an example. Today's campaign is possible because of the generosity of Val AG, the public advertising company, which made available to us places for 2,000 posters in Hamburg, Cologne, and Berlin, free of charge, as a public service to help us do what we're doing. The sad part of the story is that we approached 86 German companies and foundations, and only 3, primarily Val and also Stern magazine, were willing to give us substantial contributions to make this possible, and all the others might have had a good word for our efforts, but were not willing to in any way offer assistance.
Let me get in a couple more questions before we have to move on. I got a lot of questions for you. These Nazi war criminals that you're trying to apprehend, most of them are old enough to be your father.
I have an elderly father, it just so happens, elderly parents,
All right.
who are the age of the people that we're going after.
What do you say to them when you apprehend them, and do they show remorse for what they've done?
Okay, first of all, I don't say anything in the formal sense. In other words, I'm not there when they're arrested and say, caught you, okay? We don't say that.
Right, but I mean,
okay?
when the Nazi hunter meets the Nazi criminal.
Right. Basically, I think it's important for our viewers to understand several points. One is that the passage of time in no way diminishes the guilt of the killers. 2 is that old age should not afford protection to people who committed such heinous crimes. 3 is that the victims, every victim of the Nazis deserves that an effort be made to try and find and hold accountable the person who turned them into victims. 4, it sends a powerful message that even today this is continuing, because it basically means you commit crimes of this nature, even decades later we'll try and bring you to justice. And 5th, these trials are important in the fight against Holocaust denial and Holocaust distortion.
Yeah,
but to answer your second question,
about the
which
remorse.
is a great question, okay? And I've been asked the question many times, and I would even strengthen your question by saying that, you know, in the last 20 years, there's been so much information about the crimes of the Holocaust that these people could very easily have been exposed to the information, thought about it and said, you know what? What we did back then, when we were young people, because they were all young
boys,
then,
young men,
that
yeah.
was this Holocaust that everyone's talking about. You know what? We made a mistake. We were young, we were stupid, we were brainwashed, we thought the Jew was the enemy, we were being patriotic. But you know what?
Have you ever experienced that?
One
Yeah.
second.
Yeah.
In all the cases that I've dealt with, okay, I'm working in this field for 33 years already,
Yeah.
dealt with dozens of cases, never met a Nazi war criminal who ever expressed any regret or any remorse. And if anything, I've met the opposite. I've met people who were proud of what they did. And one of the most important Nazis that I caught in my time, or helped bring to justice, because I can't prosecute anybody, only countries can, was the commander of Jasenovac, an infamous Nazi Croatian concentration camp, run exclusively by Croatian Ustasha, the fascists, where at least 100,000 people were murdered. And when this person, Dinko Šakić, was confronted in Argentina after we tracked him down, and we had the journalist who did this whole operation of filming him and publicly exposing him, said to him, what do you have to say about the terror, the executions, etc.? So he said initially, well, Jasenovac was a penal colony. Every country deserves, has penal colonies. And then the journalist, Jorge Camarasa, said to him, but listen, I met the survivors, okay? They told me about the tortures, the numerous ways that were invented to kill people there, and the horrible murders. And Šakić said to him, listen, you don't understand. The problem with Jasenovac was that they didn't let us finish the job. Now, this was said 53 years.
Well, I think that proves why the last Nazi hunter still has some work to do. Yeah.
53 years after that camp was closed, he had plenty of time to think about it.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to have to move on. But, yeah, an incredible story. Thank you for coming in today, Dr. Zuroff.
Thank you.
All right. Now we want to move and talk about the Pope. He is greeted like a rock star. He knows how to enchant a crowd. The world, you could say, is in love with Pope Francis. He is hoping to cash in on that goodwill as he begins his first international trip as head of the Catholic Church. He's in Brazil for the church's World Youth Festival. Now, Brazil is in turmoil, torn inside by poverty, corruption, and social injustice. Can the first Pope from South America bring calm to this storm? And can he breathe new life into a church that seems chronically out of date and out of touch?
The
first Pope from the Americas, Pope Francis, is making his first trip abroad, to Brazil. His address to the young Catholic faithful will be a landmark for his papacy. His trip to Brazil is very important for the Catholic Church. Although Brazil is still the largest Catholic country in the world, the popularity of the Church has declined due to a rise in Pentecostalism. The Catholic Church hopes to retain churchgoers in Latin America by focusing on the region. The visit is also taking place against the backdrop of unrest in Brazil. The country has recently seen protests against corruption. Pope Francis wants the focus of his papacy to be on social justice. He's been sympathetic to the cause and plans on addressing the issue during the trip.
Claudia, what do you think the Pope's real task is in Brazil? To help the Brazilian Catholics or to help save the Catholic Church?
Maybe he's trying to do a little bit of both. Yeah,
Would you admit that both are in dire straits right now?
Yes, I think so, that he has a very good focus on what's necessary. I think if you read in the last 4 months of his being the Pope, he did proclaim a lot of things, said a lot of things that were very simple, that were not very high language. He made it very simple.
Because he wants to be the Pope of the people.
He wants to be the Pope of the people. He wants to be shift the focus of the Church more to people who are poor. He wants to be more in favor of social justice. And I think in this way he meets the prospect, what the demonstrators on the street, for instance, in São Paulo or in Rio, what they want.
I mean, I don't want to sound like a cynic, but it sounds like the Pope looks a lot like a politician right now. I mean, he can read Twitter, he can read Facebook, he knows what these protesters are complaining about, and the changes that they want, and then he's flying into Rio saying, I'm here to help.
Yeah. I think that in Brazil, if you look at, it's again a historical approach. You can't forget about the history in Brazil, what happened. You are faced with a system that is corrupt. They have a lot of problems with social justice. The justice system is not independent, really. Yes. So what the protesters on the streets say, that they say that every person has the right of dignity and respect as a person, and they are trying to claim that for them from a civil point of view. I'm a civilian.
They want the state.
I'm a citizen.
Yeah,
yes,
of
I want
course.
to be to have standards for being as a citizen.
But
yes?
I see a connection between what we're seeing right now with the Pope. I mean, the Pope was greeted
Yes.
in Brazil really like a rock star.
Yes.
This cult of celebrity that we see surrounding him is very similar to what we see with the royals.
Yeah, yeah.
That maybe people aren't necessarily thinking why they love these celebrities, but they do. And maybe there's something true here for the Pope as well. And I say that because the Catholic Church has always been in Brazil. The Catholic Church has been there the entire time that all this corruption, all of this infrastructure of corruption was built up. Where were the popes then? Where were they? They weren't intervening and stopping this. So how can Catholics in South America now look at Francis and think he's different?
All those popes were Europeans. He's the first Latin American pope.
Okay, but Michael is a Latin.
And that gives him a tremendous advantage. In other words, in a certain sense, they can consider him one of their own.
That makes
their personal representative.
And so that makes him feel better. But does that make him more credible, more honest?
It doesn't make him more honest, but it certainly strengthens the connection and strengthens his potential for making an impact.
But it also raises the question because, I mean, he's been in the church establishment in Argentina for all this time. I mean, he doesn't come up, from a tree and said, "Hi, I'm the new pope."
Yeah, I mean,
But he's in a position now to be able to do more than he could previously. That's the question. It's a trade-off, really.
Yeah, I was talking, before the show about the numbers that had just come in about membership in the Catholic Church. In 1980, there was something like between 90 and 95% of Brazilians said they were Catholic. Today, it's 57%. And today, 17 to 19% of Brazilians say that they are evangelical Christians. 30 years ago, 0. So you have this shift that's taking place. The Catholics in South America are now having to compete with the evangelicals. Do you think that is informing the way the Pope presents him? Is that also why he's more a man of the people? I'm going to carry my own bag. I'm not going to stay in a luxury apartment?
I don't think that he decided on the night of his being proclaimed the Pope, now I'm going to be very political correct about all that, and I do something that I haven't done before. From what I understand, he was, as the Archbishop of Buenos Aires, he did have his own style. He had his own style. And it was a style that certainly spoke of humility and trying to live a normal, maybe more simple life. And I think that he did, in the 4 months, set some very interesting signs. He's still living in the guest house. He's trying to keep a low profile on his living standards. So he's trying to stand in for what he says. I think for Brazil, as somebody who comes from Latin America, I think you made a very good point, is that the attention is much more on these regions now. Mm-hmm. And I think that we had a German Pope before, yes, we will realize that the change, we will feel that change. There will be much more attention to questions of social justice, poverty, misery. And he made it quite clear in front of Mrs. Rousseff, the president of Brazil, when he arrived yesterday, that this is something that politics cannot get away with. that they have to change
But
that.
do you think the Pope is willing to change the church to meet these changes? You've got middle classes that are burgeoning now in South America.
Yeah.
The beliefs are changing. You've
Yeah.
got countries in South America
Yeah.
where gay marriage is now
Right.
legal. These are modernizing places. Is he willing to get on board with that? Or is he going to try to create a bulwark? We're running out of time on this too. I mean, what do you think?
I think that he definitely is still going to be the Pope of the Catholic Church. So a lot of things, yes, if it comes to gay marriage or the celibacy or all these things that we can talk about that are controversial.
Female
I'm sure,
priests.
yes, I'm sure. I don't know. Let's see. Yes, if he comes up with other ways to talk about that. But first of all, I think these big issues will maybe stay the same. Maybe he's very conservative about these things. But I think his focus is very much on compassion for people who need our help.
Well, I would agree with that, but the cynic in all of us thinks he's going to have a great show in Brazil, make everybody feel good, but then he's going to fly back to Rome, and the corruption and the demonstrations are going to continue.
The substance over style. In other words, he has the style that will appeal to the people in South America. There's no question.
Yeah.
Because he's coming with humility, he's coming with simplicity, and that speaks to people for good reason. The question is whether he can affect any real changes. But there's two issues here. One is a theological issue, and you mentioned all the issues. The other one is political. And that has to do with poverty and misery.
I got to wrap you up. We're going to have to, we're letting the last Nazi hunter have the last word today. Thank you, all of you, for coming on the show today. That is going to wrap up my agenda this week. Don't forget, you can watch the show again on our website and on YouTube. And don't be shy. Tell us what you think about the show. Our inbox is always open. You see the address right there. I'm Brent Goff in Berlin. Join me next time when I set the agenda.